The Australian Council of Trade Unions is lobbying for 5 weeks of annual leave for workers across the country. The ambitious reform would follow major companies like IKEA, Apple and Bunnings, which have already introduced the changes to boost workers' well-being.
To discuss this, let's bring in David Alexander from the Australian Chamber of Commerce in Canberra and workplace expert Kim Seeling Smith, who joins us in North Queensland. David, I'm going to go to you first. Bunnings, France, Austria, Sweden, they have all introduced this 5 weeks of leave over the year. What's your opinion on this?
We think that the current system works pretty well. If firms want to do that and they have agreement with their employers, they can offer 5 weeks leave right now. And that's fine. If it's mutually agreed, that's great. We just don't think there should be a one-size-fits-all approach for every business across Australia. That would be very difficult to handle for many, many businesses. Because essentially, this edict from Canberra would be removing labour from your workforce, leaving you potentially high and dry, and having to fill that gap with other workers, or just producing less. So either way, that's a bad situation for those businesses.
So what do we know? What evidence is there about the impact that this could have on overall productivity, or even on the balance, the bottom line of small and medium businesses that might already be struggling?
Yeah, we think that it potentially would be harmful because most businesses right now are free to do it, but they don't choose to do it, which indicates that they think that their optimum situation is probably around where it is right now. So at the moment, 4 weeks leave is the standard. If you force every business, that doesn't take account of local conditions, how you're performing, what your situation is. There's no room for flexibility there. That's a very negative sort of one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, but workers aren't happy, Kim. If this was to be implemented, what do you make of the idea of a kind of use it or lose it meeting? So that if you don't take that 5 weeks within the year, that ain't going to carry over into the next year. Is that a good idea?
I think that that's a great idea because there's no doubt that Australians are burnt out. And I think that 5 weeks of annual leave is actually a good idea. But I totally agree with the use it or lose it because they've got to take it. The Aussie way is to bank all of that leave and then go on a big holiday because we're so far away from everybody. But that carries a huge burden for companies, and it doesn't solve the problem of fatigue and burnout, which is really what we need to address.
So if we look at, I guess, almost worst case scenario, in the US, workers only get 2 weeks of paid annual leave. How does that impact on workplace morale?
Why do you think I live in Australia?
Perfect.
Case in point.
Oh, it's a huge, and not only do they only get 2 weeks, but my sister is not allowed to take all of her leave because she's working on a big project, and that's not unusual. Organizations can actually request that people don't take leave, and it's a huge, I think, debilitating factor for the U.S. workforce because they don't get a chance to switch off and rest.
I mean, David, the thing is that, workers aren't happy. There's burnout, there's exhaustion, there's the cost of living crisis. Wages have failed to grow with inflation. I mean, this is it's an olive branch, isn't it, to them? This is just something that hasn't changed since the 70s, this law.
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a wish list item, really, because what the proposal is fundamentally doing is saying, every Australian works less and they're paid the same. Now, that just doesn't add up on a national scale, and I mentioned before, on an individual scale, for a business, you're going to have less people doing the work required. So how does that add up?
Well, if you raise the money and incentivise people to stay at work and then they feel better about their cost of living, then they're going to want to keep working.
So businesses are free to do that now, and that's the good situation with the current flexible situation. It's just imposing this one-size-fits-all across everyone. That would be very bad for businesses, many across Australia.
Call it the Bunnings law. That's what
Call it the Bunnings law. Let's all chat about it at work. David and Kim,
both.
thank you very much for giving us some time this morning. We'll see you soon.